Welcome back, Sebastian here. So I'm going to be doing my power rankings for the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix. As you can see, I'm not in my house. Don't have my slides with me, so instead we're bringing back the whiteboard just for this video. I feel enough time's passed that there's not much point in me doing a full review of the Grand Prix, especially since it wasn't the most exciting of races. But nonetheless, we're going to start with our power rankings. Again, sprint results, sprint qualifying, that will be taken into consideration to an extent, but definitely more heavily weighted towards the races, of course. Now, number 20, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anyone, but number 20 for this week's power rankings, again, is going to be, let's see if you can get that out, Liam Lawson. So, unfortunately for Lawson, he had the ignominy of qualifying 20th for both sprint qualifying and the race. Out-qualified by Verstappen by about a second in sprint qualifying. Main qualifying session out-qualified by about 7.5 tenths. And that is with Verstappen only doing one run in Q1. So again, probably would have been a second or more if Verstappen had done two runs in that first qualifying session. In the sprint, got his way up to 14th. Honestly, not too bad given that the sprint's only 19 laps. In the race, though, only got himself up to 15th on the road, which would have been, of course, became 12th after Gasly, Leclerc, and Hamilton all got disqualified for either being underweight in Leclerc and Gasly's case or for excessive plank wear in Hamilton's case. So it really looks better than it really was. Finished 15th, and again, Alonso retired with a mechanical DNF and really benefited from the two Saubers not having great races either. So really tough start to his career at Red Bull. And again, there's already rumors that he could be replaced for the Japanese Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. We'll probably hear more about that in the next week or so. And again, I'm probably going to make a video on Red Bull struggles, Lawson specifically, as well as what's kind of going on perhaps with their drivers. But again, that's something for next week. Number 19, I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg. So for Hülkenberg, not a great weekend. For Hülkenberg, qualified 19th in the sprint. Qualifying, finished that sprint 19th. In the main qualifying session, probably his best session of the four, qualified 12th, but unfortunately had a bit of an off, I believe on the opening lap or the second lap, and that kind of ruined that great qualifying session and led to him finishing I believe last on the road, got overtaken by his teammate towards the end of the race as well, and again benefited from the 3 disqualifications to finish in 15th. Number 18, just like his teammate, I'm going to go with Gabriel Bortoleto. Not a great weekend overall, I would say. Qualifying for the main sprint qualifying went pretty well, qualified 14th. Finished that sprint in 18th. Not really his fault. Got hit by Doohan towards the end of the race. Main qualifying session, qualified 19th, not great there. And then in the race, finished 14th. Had that bit of a clumsy spin on the opening lap. So that was kind of my biggest rationale for putting him this low. But again, it's only a second weekend in F1. He's going to have some rough moments. That being said, the speed looks there. He's pretty close to his teammate Hülkenberg in pace, and much closer than Lawson, for example. So I think that's really all you can ask at this point, especially at tracks that he's not super familiar with, especially in China's case. All right, number 17, I'm going to go with Jack Doohan. So for Doohan, sprint qualifying 16th, sprint race 20th. Of course, that was because of him torpedoing Bortoleto, so a bit of a clumsy move there. And then he picked up another penalty in the race today. This time it was for forcing Hadjar off track. I did feel like the second penalty was a bit borderline, probably could have not been a penalty. But that being said, I think it was a bit of a scrappy race from Doohan. Qualifying pace is okay. He's pretty close to Gasly. But again, if you looked at his Formula 2 results, you would have expected pretty good qualifying performances. The fact that he never won Formula 2, despite the fact that those qualifying performances were so good, definitely suggests that, again, either really bad luck or just not that great racecraft or race pace. And I think that's kind of what we're ending up with, where the race pace, I think, is a little bit worse off. But again, you wouldn't expect that as well for a rookie. So it's one of those things we'll have to wait and see how much it improves in the coming races. I do think that there's still a bit of pressure on him, but of course, Lawson's struggles are definitely, I think, could change the dynamics in the F1 driver market quite a bit, depending on what happens there. I don't know if it'll save Doohan's seat, but at least in the short term, it's definitely taking kind of a lot of the media attention off of him. Number 16, I'm going to go with Carlos Sainz. So for Sainz, another tough weekend at Williams. He does score his first points for the team, so that's pretty important. But that being said, really benefited from those disqualifications. Otherwise, he wouldn't have finished in the points. In the sprint, qualified 13th. In the sprint, then finished 17th. Was the only driver to require a pit stop in the sprint, so really struggling with the tires there. So again, not great. Then in the main Grand Prix, qualified 15th. Qualified by his teammate both occasions, and then finishes the race in 10th, but would have been 12th on the road. A really odd strategy, I felt, for both Williams. Stayed very late out on that first set of medium tires, which I do think hurt them a little bit towards the end of the race, as it seems like everyone basically opted to do a one-stop strategy except for the Racing Bulls. But nonetheless, not a great weekend for Sainz. I think he's going to want to start being closer to Albon and start beating him a bit more than he has through this part of the season. All right, number 14, or number 15, I should say. Yeah, number 15, I'm going to go with Kimi Antonelli. So for Antonelli, not a great weekend in China. I think that's not really a surprise. No experience at the track. And he was pretty far off his teammate Russell in both the sprint session and the main session. So let's see. Sprint sessions qualified 7th, okay, but his teammate did qualify 5th. And I do think that there was a pretty decent gap between the two of them. And then in the sprint, finished 7th, finished behind Tsunoda in a slower car. I thought he probably should have finished ahead of Tsunoda, but wasn't able to do that. In the main qualifying session, qualified 8th, whereas his teammate was 2nd. And then in the race, finished 6th, but that would have been 8th on the road without the disqualifications of the two Ferraris, and ended up behind Ocon as well. So I do think, still a learning weekend, but pretty far off his teammate Russell's pace. But that being said, definitely, in comparison to Lawson, definitely a much better first two races for Antonelli. Number 14, I should say. Number 14... Yeah, we're going to go with Charles Leclerc. So number 14, I'm going with Charles Leclerc. Not a great weekend. I would say definitely the slower of the two Ferrari drivers. In the sprint, qualified 4th, ended up 5th, whereas his teammate won, took sprint pole and took the win in the sprint. So definitely lacking a bit there. Main race and main qualifying session, qualified 6th. So not quite as big of a gap between himself and his teammate there. But in the race, finished 5th on the road before eventually being disqualified. Picked up front wing damage on the opening lap with a bit of a clumsy move, where on the opening lap where he almost took himself and his teammate out. So yeah, really scrappy weekend from Leclerc. He's definitely going to not want too many of these if he has any hope of fighting for the Drivers' Championship this year. But again, that's looking like pretty far off already after only 2 races. All right, number 13. Yeah, number 13, I'm going to go with Lance Stroll. So for Stroll, a decent weekend, I would say. Picked up points, but again, wasn't going to pick up points without kind of the situation benefiting him quite a bit. Sprint qualified 10th, and then in the sprint finished 9th, 1 place behind Norris. I thought the sprint portion of the weekend was pretty impressive, but I wasn't too impressed with the main portion. So qualified 14th, out-qualified by his teammate Alonso, and then in the race, finished 9th, but would have finished 12th on the road. He was on the same strategy as Behrman. Behrman's a complete rookie, or pretty much a rookie. I know he did a couple of races last year, but the fact is that I think he really lacked pace on the medium tire, and I thought probably could have done a bit of a better job, and definitely could have finished ahead of Behrman, I think, if he had a bit more pace there. So first, I would say sprint portion of the weekend pretty good. Main session not so great, but still I think better than I would say seven other drivers on the grid. Number 12, we're gonna go with Fernando Alonso. So for Alonso, sprint portion of the weekend not so good. Out qualified by Stroll, beaten by Stroll in the sprint as well. But did out-qualify him and was out-racing Stroll in the main portion of the Grand Prix, was ahead of him there. And then, of course, came into the pits with brake failure. So it's kind of hard to judge. I would say Alonso Stroll very evenly matched this weekend. Without Alonso's unfortunate mechanical DNF, almost certainly finishes ahead of Stroll. And again, that probably would justify putting him above Stroll anyway. But I think reality, Stroll has 10 points, Alonso has 0. That's not super representative of I think, the gap between the two of them and their relative performance so far this season. But yeah, so 11th or 12th for Alonso. Number 11, I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly. So for Gasly, qualified 17th in the sprint. Qualifying, finished the sprint 12th. Good comeback there. Main qualifying, qualified 16th, and then eventually finished 11th on the road before being disqualified. So I think race pace was pretty good for Gasly. I think did what he was expected to do. A bit unlucky with the mechanical DNF as well. If it had just been the two Ferraris who got disqualified and not him, then of course he would have picked up some points, his first points of the year, but unfortunately not to be for him. I do think he's going to be a little bit concerned that Doohan's been qualifying so close to him. For the most part, I know the first race in Australia, it was about 7/10, but again, that wasn't representative because Doohan wasn't able to set a proper lap at the end of Q2 because of Hamilton's spin last weekend. But so I do think he will be a little bit concerned that Doohan's already this close to him in qualifying pace. But nonetheless, I do think it was a pretty decent Chinese Grand Prix all around for Gasly. So taking a look at your bottom 10, just to review again, just because I know people can't really see. So we have Gasly 11th, Alonso 12th, Stroll 13th, 14th, Leclerc 15th, Antonelli 16th, Sainz, Doohan 17th, 18th, Bortoletto, 19th, Hulkenberg, and 20th, Lawson. So 5 of your 6 rookies are in that bottom 10. So moving into the top 10 now. Number 10 is that final rookie who I felt was the best rookie this weekend, and that was Isaac Hadjar. So for Hadjar, sprint qualifying not so good, qualified 15th, but was able to make his way up to 13th. So again, only 2 positions there, but main Grand Prix, main qualifying I thought was pretty impressive. Qualified 7th for the Grand Prix, out-qualified Antonelli in what I think was definitely a slower car. So really good performance there by Hadjar in qualifying. Main Grand Prix, I think probably scores points if the team didn't decide that they were going to be the only team to do a 2-stop strategy. So really unfortunate for Hadjar there. Otherwise, I think he could have easily gotten his first points in Formula One. I think I've been pretty impressed with him relative to expectations, and I think coming into the season, I would say he's the driver who's probably impressed the most. But that being said, the Racing Bulls does seem like a pretty fast car and pretty well-balanced car as well. But that being said, he's making the most of it, in my opinion, and I thought he had a pretty good weekend in Shanghai. Actually, no, that's not true. So he's not the only rookie. There's still another rookie to go. I completely forgot this driver. But number 9 is, I believe, that final rookie. Let's see if I can actually check. Yes, that is the final rookie, and that is Oliver Behrman. So for Behrman, qualified 12th for the sprint qualifying, fell back to 15th, but again, not too shabby, I felt there. Main qualifying, qualified 17th, I believe had some kind of issue, wasn't able to set a flying lap at the end of Q1, but really good comeback, finished 8th on the road, beat Stroll on the same strategy and what I would say are relatively evenly matched cars. So I felt overall pretty strong weekend from Behrman. Out-qualified Ocon 1 got out-qualified by him in the main qualifying, but that being said, I thought pretty decent weekend for Behrman. Number 8, this is a tough one, but number 8 is going to be Lando Norris. So for Lando Norris, I think really the reason why he's an 8th and not higher up is almost entirely because of the sprint. Qualified 6th for the sprint qualifying despite having, I would say, the fastest car, and then made a mistake on that opening lap of the sprint, dropped down to 9th, and then really struggled with pace and only got past Stroll in the Aston Martin in the closing laps there. So really tough race in the sprint, dropped a whole bunch of points to Piastri, dropped points to Verstappen as well. Main qualifying, main Grand Prix session were better. Qualified 3rd, finished 2nd, got ahead of Russell at the start, undercut by Russell midway through the race, I believe, during the pit stops, but was able to re-overtake. Did seem to have some kind of brake failure towards the end, which is why the gap towards the end of the race between himself and Piastri was bigger than I thought, but I think pretty consistently throughout the whole weekend, I did feel like Norris was the 2nd fastest McLaren driver this weekend. So even without the sprint, he probably would have been, 5th or 6th at best. But the sprint point performance definitely drops him quite a few positions. So Lando Norris in 8th. Number 7, I'm going to go with Alex Albon. So for Albon, qualifying 9th for sprint qualifying, finished 11th, so just a couple of positions outside the points, not bad there. Main qualifying, qualified 10th, and then finished the race in 7th. Benefited quite a bit from the disqualifications. Without that, he finishes in 10th. Still picks up points, and definitely has been the stronger of the two Williams drivers so far this season. So again, pretty impressed with his start to the season. So I feel 7th is good for him. Number 6, I'm going to go with Esteban Ocon. Massive turnaround for the Haas team after Australia. They get a 5th place finish. Of course, benefit quite a bit from the disqualifications. Otherwise, that would have been 7th, I believe. But for Ocon, still ahead of Antonelli in the Mercedes. And I believe, race pace, qualifying pace was quite good. Qualified 11th in main qualifying, finished that race in 5th. Of course, would have been 7th on the road before that. Sprint session, not so good. But again, sprint's not as important as the main session, obviously, just because the big points are really on Sunday. Now, into the top 5. Let's see. Yeah, number 5, I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis Hamilton, sprint portion of the weekend, excellent. I would say easily the best driver there. Qualified on sprint pole, won that sprint race. Again, full marks there. Main portion of the Grand Prix, not so good. Out-qualified his teammate Leclerc, so again, gets credits there. But the race pace really struggled. Ended up finishing 6th on the road before eventually being disqualified for excessive plank wear. And what that means is that Ferrari were running the car too close to the ground. And with these ground effect rules, it really suggests that probably the car was actually faster than it probably should have legally been. Usually, when you run the car closer to the track, it means that plank wear is actually higher, but again, also means that the car performance is usually a bit better. So the fact that they were running that low, Hamilton was also struggling that much, does kind of suggest that he was really struggling for race pace, especially during that Grand Prix. So not a great race for Hamilton, but I think he will be happy that he was able to find quite a bit of performance during the sprint portion of the weekend. Again, 5th place isn't bad either. Number 4, driver who's been one of the best drivers to start the season, I would say, and that is Yuki Tsunoda. And again, unfortunately, a second week in a row where he does not get points in the main Grand Prix, but still, I would felt one of the most impressive drivers. So qualified 8th for the sprint, finished 6th in the sprint, so really good job there, finished ahead of Antonelli. And then during the main qualifying 9th, so again, not a great result there. I think just wasn't able to put a lap together the final run of Q3, but definitely looked better of the two Racing Bulls drivers. And then in the main race, really got undone both by the strategy. The strategy definitely did not help Tsunoda today, being the only team to really commit to a 2-stop strategy. That basically put them well at the back. I think he was running 14th, 14th, I believe. And then he had some kind of front wing failure, which meant he had to pit for a new front wing, and that put him back even more and ended up being the final classified driver on the road. So yeah, not a great weekend in that respect in results, but I did feel the performance was very strong. All right, number 3. I'm going to go with Max Verstappen. So Verstappen's in this really tricky situation where when you compare his performance to his teammate Lawson, he's absolutely destroying him. He finished, I think, 50 seconds up the road from his teammate over the course of the Grand Prix, which basically translates to about a second a lap difference between himself and Lawson. And usually when you see that kind of gap and it's in the front running team, you would say, oh, absolutely best driver of the weekend. But of course, because there's so many questions about what exactly is going on with Red Bull, is the car really the slowest car on the grid, or is Verstappen a god, or is Lawson basically turned into Nikita Mazepin? And of course, I think the real answer is somewhere in the middle, obviously. But I do feel like this was a very strong weekend from Verstappen, and did his best to kind of maximize the performance of the car. But unfortunately, using that logic, and because Verstappen is just so consistent, I could basically just put Verstappen in first in my power rankings every week without much complaint. But I think just for the sake of being a bit more interesting, not to say that he had a perfect weekend, but I think I think third's a good spot. I felt there was two drivers who I think also had really good weekends and maybe slightly bit better. So for Verstappen, qualified second in sprint qualifying, finished the sprint third. Thought he maximized points there. Maybe could have held off Piastri in the sprint, but unfortunately, the tires were just done. Main qualifying, unfortunately, qualified fourth. Don't think he could have gone ahead any higher. And then in the race, finished fourth, dropped behind both Ferraris at the start. So again, maybe could have had a little bit of a better start, but I thought his race after that was very, very good. And I thought, did a great job to get ahead of both Ferraris in the end. Number two, I'm going to go with George Russell. Another really good Grand Prix for Russell. Fifth in the sprint qualifying, fourth in the sprint. Main qualified second, split two McLarens, which I thought excellent job there. And then came home for a third, another podium result for him. So felt for Russell, really, really strong Grand Prix there. And number one, I think this is probably obvious at this point, but it is your race winner, Oscar Piastri. Qualified third for the sprint, finished the sprint in second, took his first pole position in F1, looked very, very controlled in the race, had a several second gap to Norris for the majority of the Grand Prix, and came home and took his third career F1 win. So just a review, just so that in case you want a refresher. So let's see, from number 20 up. So 20th Lawson, 19th Hulkenberg, 18th Bortoletto, 17th Doohan, 16th Sainz, 15th Antonelli, 14th Leclerc, 13th Stroll, 12th Alonso, 11th Gasly, 10th Hadjar, 9th Behrman, 8th Norris, 7th Albon, 6th Ocon, 5th Hamilton, 4th Tsunoda, 3rd Verstappen, 2nd Russell, and 1st is Piastri. Of course, this is just a one-off. After this, I pre-recorded a video over the weekend. That will be going live on Thursday. I'll be back on next week, and I'll be able to make a video for Monday, Tuesday. So again, this is just a one-off. I don't think the sound quality is going to be super good since I'm recording this on my phone. But again, if you're still watching at this point, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back in a couple of days. So again, thank you so much. Goodbye.